Welcome back. Another episode of the Virtus Podcast, Season 4, Episode 4, I believe.
Sure, I'll take your word for it.
We're very lucky today and very shocked, I would say, that Shane actually agreed to come on today. But Shane is our resident accountant, or one of now, because you've been joined by the rest of the crew.
I have.
Or the original OG accountant. Shane
I'm
works at
second.
Illuminate. Second.
I'm the second. The Beak was here first.
Yeah, let's not get into that,
All
shall we? Shout out Andrew Vanderbeek. We're waiting for a return. Anyway, Mr. Scott, Illuminate accountant, businessman, Mr. Consistent, Mr. Routine, which we're going to get into later, which he now knows about, which is horrifying. Shane, give me a Shane Scott starter pack. What's in it?
The starter pack. Well, hi, I'm Shane. As Mitch alluded to, I am an accountant by training. I work for Illuminate, who's just down the road here. I'm lucky enough to walk about 2 minutes to work from Virtus, which is pretty sick.
But you don't.
I don't know. I should. I drive here, then I drive to work. Currently, I'm just shy of my 30th birthday, which is terrifying. But I'll be nicking off to Tassie for that sometime shortly.
Spring chicken, mate.
Yeah, spring chicken, especially compared to you.
Hey, I'm sensitive about that.
So I'm lucky enough to live with my partner, Soph, who's an absolute legend. Shout out to Soph. She's a social worker and is a much better person than I am. And share a house with her and our 3-year-old border collie, who I love having our little unit of 3 currently. And even though there may be some kiddos in the future, not sure about that one yet.
Fur baby first.
We're happy with our
Keep
fur
the fur
baby
baby.
currently. Outside of this place, I do a little bit of everything. I'm a massive nerd. And not in the sort of like gamer space or anything like that, but I sort of love to understand all things about sort of like computers and do a little bit of coding and that side of things, which is a massive waste of my time because I don't do it for a living, but I enjoy it greatly. I've been known to do stupid things around my house, like, make light switches automated and stuff, which much to Sophie's
Why does that not surprise me?
the bane of her existence. And when a light doesn't turn on the house because I've broken something, she just sort of rolls her eyes and wonders why she dates me. And I don't really blame her on that one. So I do a bit of that. I don't currently play any sport, which I think is probably a relatively rare thing for Virtus. I don't know.
I would say so. Weekend warrior?
Yeah, I'm not.
Weekday warrior, actually.
Weekday. I haven't I haven't been involved in any sport for probably about a year before COVID, where I just dropped out of domestic basketball, and so that means that for the most part, I just lift because I like lifting.
You like getting punished by me every
Unfortunately, yes.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday.
And I think the only other thing is I've been a member here since 2019.
Yeah,
Question
you're coming
mark?
up on your 4-year badge, I think.
Oof,
Yeah.
damn.
You get a little key ringy thing.
Do I?
Yeah, you do. It's
Yeah,
1,200
the
days.
first perk.
1,200 days. How does that make you feel?
I'm terrified. I'm terrified to know how much I've spent here, actually.
Let's not get into that. Because that's a horrifying number, I'm sure.
That's fine. It's all worth it.
You're an elusive character, meaning that you keep your cards close to your chest. What is one thing that people don't know about Shane that you wish you knew, that now you have a forum on the Virtus podcast to talk about?
One thing that people should know about me,
That they might not think. We know you're a nerd. We know you're good with numbers. We know you're here all the time.
that's a good question. I think at heart I'm actually a bit of an emotional wreck, which is a really
Hey,
dumb
there's
thing.
nothing wrong with that.
But love my mum to bits. But one of her not so great qualities is that she is a very feeling person, which is a great quality and not a great quality at the same time. And I very much inherited that from her. So it means that look, if I even think about watching I Am Legend again and the scene where the dog passes away,
Anything with a dog, I'm out.
I'm a wreck. So the idea of watching any movie that features a dog is just a terrifying thought for me right now. So that's probably one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had lots of curiosity about this, and you won't believe me when I say this. You're like, oh, he's just making it up. Lots of people want to know about you, Shane. from the fact that they see you all the time and you just kind of keep to your own. You're normally swearing at a barbell or throwing it clean on the ground because you can't get under it because you're incapable of squatting
PB this
lower.
week.
Yeah, it was. It was.
PB.
I looked. I saw. What was the PB for those playing at home?
92.5,
Yes.
which is
Close to triple figures.
very getting
What-
close.
What's going to get there first, bench or cleans?
Bench.
Yeah, we're close.
Bench is very close.
597?
Yeah, 97.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got.
Two and a
So
half.
yeah,
Easy.
that's all right. We'll do it.
Couple of coffees.
Couple of coffees.
I'll
Get a
get
good
the
sleep
ammonia
in.
salts out. That'll get you going.
Yep.
What made you start at Verse?
Oh, that's a good question. So,
That's 2 for 2 now. Yes.
look,
I'm on. You're pumping
one-
my tires up here, Shane.
quick diversion here. One thing that people don't know about me is that I'm a broken record. And so that means that I've got about probably 10 select things that I say and I use them over and over again.
I think we all do. I think I notice that a lot in here because clients that hang around me enough start saying some of the dumb shit that I say
that is
more often.
correct.
So
Yeah.
I'll probably take a few of those off you.
Yeah, well, I'll believe you there, knackers. And
All right, Dad. Or Uncle.
so to get back to why I started at Virtus, I started because I was currently training at Anytime in Somerville, which is nice. Anytime, it was great. I've been training by myself for probably since I was like 18, 17. And while I enjoyed doing that, I'd sort of stopped making progress and actually really didn't enjoy going to gym anymore. It was just something I did because I knew it was good for me and I wanted to sort of maintain that fitness. It was very
Just
much
jumping on a treadmill by the end from memory. Is that what you're doing?
Nah, at the end when I was at Virtus, yes, I'd do some
Yeah,
cardio there.
yeah.
But previous to that, I'd sort of do all the usual free weights and that side of things. And I enjoyed that, but I wasn't making progress. I knew the basics, but I didn't enjoy programming for myself. I didn't enjoy sort of like being there by myself and driving myself forward.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that attracted me about Virtus is one that I knew the people over here, and I knew that I would they were like similar in sort of values and that sort of thing to me, and I liked the idea of starting with that. But the idea of basically rocking up and just having a program set that was tailored to what I wanted to do, and then just doing it,
Yep.
was what really attracted to me, because at the end of the day, it's why I'm still here.
That was going to be my next question. What keeps you coming back?
What keeps me coming back is that I really enjoy the style of training that we do here. But for me, what keeps me here in particular is at the end of the day, I can rock up and each day that I'm challenged, and it's a constantly moving challenge that for me is really important. But the key thing about it is I don't have to think about it. And so for me, I rock up like without fail 3 times a week. I won't even look at my program before I rock up. And
Unlike
the second
lots of people.
yeah. And then whatever, I will do my warm up, and then the second we get into block A, I discover what's in block A and I do it.
Cleans. Fuck.
Correct.
Yeah.
In block A, B, and C.
Yeah. And I think, and the topic that we're going to get into later, which we'll touch on briefly now, and this is actually come from the people. I didn't know what I wanted to actually talk about from a topic point of view. So if you don't know, as you're not a seasoned listener of the Virtus podcast, the topic the reason for season 4 is with getting to know people, but then also giving a topic that not necessarily the people that know the person on the podcast can learn from X. So for an example, Tess and I spoke about ACLs and injury prevention in general. Mm-hmm. George and I spoke about being a teenager during COVID. Obviously, a pretty good insight into that. And for Shane's topic is going to be on discipline and creating routine. So you are a very structured man. Where does that come from?
The structure, me being quite structured, it comes from me being me, which is a really dumb way of saying that a lot of the things I picked up in life are built around of how I think.
Yep.
So I naturally try and understand certain things, but I also naturally try and structure it a certain way. And so that's, most people would look at what I do for a living and say, oh, accountant, yeah, that makes sense. And that is one of those things, like for me, accounting, unlike certain other things, is actually quite easy and it fits really well into my brain.
Yep.
And so doing the sort of the structure and the rhythms and that side of things, and sort of putting that into that sort of habit and second nature stuff just fits really well with my brain.
Yep.
I think I'm really lucky in that respect. It does mean that like I fully admit that there's certain things that are more difficult for me and how I think, and it's one of the things that I'm really grateful for. Soph and I in our relationship, because she's a lot better at that. We complement each other really nicely
Yep.
in that respect. But yeah, I think for me it just comes down to I've picked up the habits that I have in a way due to the way I think, and then I sort of reinforce them by just continuing to do them without fail.
It's a nice little teaser into what's to come. But before we get into that, how'd you get into accounting?
So
What made you pick accounting? Because someone who's quite literal and logical and numeral can do a bunch of different things. But what was attractive about accounting?
accounting was attractive because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Do any of us?
So I was in there at high school, did not have much in the way of ambitions, but I was good with numbers. I was good with sort of fairly logical tasks. Wanted to do something.
What like?
Typically when you're looking at like a lot of the flat out just being a nerd and structuring like how computers work and all of that kind of garbage.
You're allowed to get into it.
No, absolutely not. No, I'll go straight past that.
Hey, I used to build my own PCs too back in the day, so I can relate.
I definitely did that, but no, I've played tech support for pretty much everyone I know for ever since I was 16, and I don't think I'll ever escape that. But for me to get into accounting, it was purely just a case of I'm good at these skills, and to be honest, accountants are really employable. And it doesn't matter if I wanted to work for a gym, or if I wanted to work for a bank, if I wanted to work for that, everyone needs those people.
Yeah.
And so it was literally just me taking a bet on the idea that, look, I actually don't know what I wanted to, but if I have this skill set, I can go anywhere.
Yep. Did you grow up down here?
Yep, I grew up in Somerville.
And had always come from there? Like family has always been local, or?
Family's always been local, yeah.
What was like Little Shane like?
That's a good question. Little Shane was quite different to me, and there's definitely glimmers of how I was when I was younger today, but I was quite a shy, nervous, quite reserved kid. I'm definitely still reserved, but I didn't really sort of come out of my shell until I went to uni. So that meant for most of sort of being young and sort of primary school and high school, I was never outgoing. I was never sort of taking chances or risks or getting to know lots of people. Like, I had my crowd and I stuck to them.
Yep.
And while like all of my friends at high school were great, there was the case that I had a close-knit crowd of friends.
Yep.
I didn't really sort of explore much outside of that because I was quite reserved and not the most socially confident person.
Yeah. Is there a reason for that? Like, looking back or in hindsight, like, what made you be socially comfortable but not comfortable to branch out, if that makes sense?
It's a good question. And
if you've had time to reflect, if not, you better hurry up.
so my, funnily enough, one of the things about me is that I often don't take too much time to reflect on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's because
been a general trend so far of season 4 is haven't had time to reflect, so now's the time.
I at the end of the day, being a relatively practical person, if I don't think I'm going to receive value or find meaning in that, I don't necessarily care about reminiscing about it.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, I'm super grateful for where I am today, and I wouldn't change any of that.
Yeah.
But do I need to find a cause where I am today or find meaning in that? No.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Because I echo that in very much through high school. Not that anyone will believe this. Like, I was actually quite socially comfortable in the way that I didn't branch out. Like, I had lots of people that I knew, similar to now, but had my own little group of people that, looking back, I was comfortable and didn't really want to get out of my shell to an extent as well. So, like, I can relate to that as well. Looking back, it's not something I would change. And as lots of people will say, this place changes people. So, like, me starting at Virtus, nearly 7 years ago now, like, that's when I probably came out of my shell a bit. And no one would believe me that I'm naturally a pretty good introvert. Like, I can sit at home for all day and just not talk to anyone and be quite comfortable. But obviously, being here, it's a different hat that I put on, I would say. Yeah. That forces me to be extroverted and loud and put on punk rock Disney and all sorts of other things. So I can relate to that. What do your parents do for work?
So my dad is a logistics consultant, which is
Of
a
course he
really, it's a really,
And there it is.
yeah, it's a bit of a wanky way of saying this. He is responsible for, he's basically a really smart person about managing warehouses and stock movements and that kind of thing. He worked for Pioneer Electronics for a long period of time, so the ones that like make car stereos and plasma TVs and stuff like that back in the day.
Road. Sorry, I was just checking this.
Yeah, different
Close.
one. But so he's done that. He's a big reason for why I sort of pushed into the business world and sort of fascination with technology and stuff.
Yeah.
And my mum is probably the biggest diehard mum you'll ever meet. She's very much always looked after my brother and I to the best of her abilities, and she's also poured herself into her work. But when she had my brother and I, she left her career in banking and sort of had different jobs over time in the intervening years, and she's always poured her heart into them, but never sort of continued on with a career outside of that.
Yeah. What's something growing up that you did with your parents that you remember, and it was something that made up kind of what you, it was like your identity as a kid?
So this is one of those instances that I, like looking back at how I grew up, like there's definitely moments that sort of made up sort of what I did, and I remember doing all of like the junior sports and stuff like that, which I was overall rubbish at.
Yeah.
And I enjoy doing that, and like, you know, the weekend sort of soccer trips and playing for Baxter Soccer Club, which we were terrible. We got thrashed every weekend. Don't know if that was great for my character or confidence, but
I come at this from a direction of like a lot of people that come through Virtus and a lot of people that I know are quite sporty and athletic, and that's what they identify as. But knowing someone that didn't play sport necessarily all the way through childhood, like just what does that look like?
So for me, like a lot of teenagers, I played a lot of Call of Duty. Very good at it. Too good at it, and some of the stats when I was doing that are absolutely terrifying.
I can also echo that.
So I did a lot of that, but I also did like a lot of hanging out with my sort of mates at the time. Like we would just do the usual dumb stuff, but instead of being sort of super obsessed with sport and that sort of thing, it'd be more like, oh, let's go ahead and we'll build this random thing, or we'll go try this, or whatever. So it's not. I don't mean I definitely did play my sport, and I was, you know, soccer training a couple of times a week and that kind of thing. But by the end of sort of high school, I was playing a bit of basketball, and then just push through high school and seeing mates and all the usual stuff.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say, knowing you enough and well enough, I wouldn't say you identify as someone who plays sport necessarily.
No.
You're a sporty person that doesn't play sport.
Yeah,
you are moderately athletic now.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, come on, you make people in awe when you do some jumping downstairs. Let's be real. You're allowed to pump your tires up here.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty proud of where that's gotten to.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I wouldn't identify myself as a sporty person, but I would identify myself as an active or relatively outdoorsy person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about that do you enjoy? Being active and outdoorsy.
So for me,
well, how does it start? For someone who didn't naturally really love sport, or naturally wasn't necessarily greatly talented and wanted to do it as a career, what drives you to be healthy?
What drives me to be healthy,
or whatever term you want to put on that.
So there's a couple of things. So one being sort of a bit of an outdoorsy person today, I very much owe to getting to know Soph and how much she enjoyed that side of things.
Yep.
Growing up, I never went camping or anything like that. It was always like, you know, very structured holidays, and you'd go somewhere and you'd stay in a hotel, which was great. But one thing I have come to appreciate growing up is like getting outdoors and doing that.
Yep.
I think for me, what I like, why I enjoy it is purely how different it is to doing what I do for a living and doing what I like, other things I enjoy. Like for me, like, you know, I sit down all day, you know, standing desk, whatever, but I effectively stay still all day and I talk to people, I stare at a screen, I type numbers into boxes on tax returns and random stuff like that. And while there is a lot more to it and there's a lot of sort of like, you know, thinking and that, all of that side of things, at the end of the day, I'm stationary and I do that.
Yep.
And I'm very conscious of the effect that has on me, but also my mental health and physical health.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, by sort of keeping active both, you know, at Virtus and outside of Virtus, it provides a nice balance in my life where I get to do those things and enjoy those things, because I really do enjoy like the work side of things and the personal side of things. But getting outside and doing this and getting outdoors gives me an appreciation for both.
Yeah, what's it like when you know you've had a 12, 14, 16 hour day at times, literally looking at your computer? And I come at this from the angle of, one, COVID, because obviously we couldn't gym and we didn't have necessarily all the outdoorsy things, or we couldn't get away as much as we like to. How do you know that has an effect on you? And what does that kind of look like for you?
So like a lot of people that do that kind of thing, like, you know, if you walk away with sore eyes, and that's a thing. But
You got fancy blue light glasses?
No.
Damn. Do they work?
no idea.
Different can of worms.
For some people they work, but fortunately I sleep okay.
Yes.
But yeah. So like, it's a like how do I know that sort of like how that affects me? I know for me, like, you know, in all honesty, like, one, my energy levels fall through the floor, and then two, my overall sort of mental health also deteriorates.
Yep.
And so at the end of the day, like, I firmly come with the belief that we're not, like, I'm not a religious person by any means. Like, I'm as atheist as it comes. But I sort of firmly believe that we're not designed to sit there and think all day. We're effectively, our bodies are built to be moving, and a lot of the way that our hormones work and all of that stuff is built around the idea that we're moving each day.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're going to sit there all day, it's going to have an effect on our body. And for me, I notice that because it's part of the reason that I sort of try and stay active, is to counteract that.
Yep. What if you get to the end of a day and let's say it's what day don't you gym here? Thursday. Say it's a Thursday and you've just done 14 hours on a laptop. What's a strategy you use to get yourself to do something after work? Or are you happy just going, yeah, let's just get through to Friday, go home, have a nap kind of vibe? Do you feel like you need to do something every day?
I need to do something every day.
What's that look like if you don't get the opportunity to spend an hour and 10 here?
So for me, I'm really comfortable that if I'm not training, I don't need to be doing something hard. I just need to do something.
Yep.
And so fortunately, having a 3-year-old border collie, that's that sort of takes care of it. You get home and you've got a cute dog sort of looking at you, saying, "Can we go for a walk?" And that makes it a bit sort of makes it easier. And for me, having that sort of expectation works. But the second part to that is that leaving work, you're always thinking, you're always on the spot, and often you don't get to finish everything. You never get to finish everything.
What did you say when you got here today?
I left a giant pile of metaphorical shit on my desk.
I wasn't sure if you're talking about Ollie or some paperwork, so I just had to clear that up.
Yeah, so and so at the end of the day, you've got all these things that are sort of like unreconciled in your brain that are sitting there, and you just have to be aware that when you go home, you don't automatically release that.
Yeah.
There's some people that are lucky enough to be able to do that well, but I don't. And so for me, the way that I do that is I go do something, and that's just a case of like whether I go for a walk with Ollie and listen to a podcast, or whether I get out on the bike or something like that. But I generally get outdoors, away from the screen, and do that. And it's very much throwing back to a talk I heard years ago, which I'm not going to be able to reference, but the idea of a third space where effectively you go home, but before you enter your home life, you go into a third space where you can transition, and that'll take time.
Yeah. Does that look like on the way home, or is that you need an exit space? So what I mean by that is, like, are you leaving the workplace going, I can clear my mind of work, or are you getting in the car still thinking about work and then having to switch your brain into home life? Like, how do you decipher between the two? So coming from a place of people struggle to leave work at work and bring stuff home, and knowing that you are someone who, one, really values their job and highly cares about their job, but is also highly invested, that sometimes it's hard to switch off from work. Like, how do you justify the two?
So,
and I know this is something you struggle with, so.
Yeah, I'm far from perfect. And while I definitely have my own strategies to be better at it, I don't do it completely. And, you know, if I'm having a stressful period of time at work, like, I will notice my ability to train here, but also my ability to focus on home life deteriorates. And that's just the practicality of caring about what you do and working in an industry which has its ups and downs, like any workplace. But for me, like a drive home does help with that. But for me, it physically has to be doing something.
Yep.
Like it can't just be sitting there and letting stuff clear your mind. I have to be doing something.
Yep.
And so whether like a dumb thing is just like playing Xbox for half an hour, great.
Yep.
Like, or going for a walk or jumping on the bike, it has to be doing something. It can't
Yep.
be just passively sitting there and waiting.
Yeah, interesting. I like. It's funny you say that because I feel like I get in the car and just like switch off. So one of the things that I actually valued living further away from work is the drive was just like nonchalant time. And you know the age-old adage when you're driving down Murdoch Highway and you've gone through 4 roundabouts, you're not really sure how you went through 4 roundabouts, whether that's healthy or not, maybe not. But that's for someone who is able to kind of separate their worlds. I feel like different to you, which is why I really want to talk about it, is I can go into that place, switch off, get home, and then do extra work. And for me, having to take work home sometimes, and Shane goes, "Oh, I hurt my shoulder doing muscle ups. Can you fix this?" Not that you ever do that, but being
Give it time.
Yeah, give it time. We're working on it. Being able to separate the two environments. Sometimes I struggle with, but I know for you exactly what you're talking about. You take your dog for a walk, Ollie, and we're going to get into that in a minute. It's one of the favourite questions of the people, and I'm sure you can guess who.
I know exactly who asked that.
Yeah, you know exactly who it came from. It's something that I really value that you do, is be able to go home and do an activity that switches you off, and that you can leave work at home, even though sometimes you don't like to, and you leave work at work when you get home, even though you don't like to.
Yeah, I think like while I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home when I can, and especially being 15 minutes from work, like a drive, whenever I can, I try and come to work, because the idea of having 2 spaces, where I've got a home space and a workspace, makes it so much easier for me to switch off. And I'm very conscious of when I do work from home, it's very rare that I can completely let go of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would get better with that if I was able to work full time from home.
Yeah.
But I know for me right now that if I want to be able to go to work, do my work, and then bugger off home and do home stuff, the best way to do that is to literally have 2 physical spaces.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about physical spaces, because I'm just trying to relate some of this to like my life as well. As I reckon my spaces in my house as well as different spaces. Like I have my my console set up, my monitor and stuff at my desk, which is where I also do work. But also if I sit on the couch, I know I'm not going to do any of it. And it was just an interesting reflection going, I think I justify those 2 spaces. Again, whether that's good or not, maybe not.
Well, my home desk is also like a fun space.
Yeah.
Like, so at the end of the day, like computer nerd at work, computer nerd at home. And so like, I'm like, I'm going to try building this thing. And so I'll sit there on my personal laptop and do that. And that's the same spot I also work from at home.
Yeah.
So it's not, to me, that is also a sort of a fun space.
Yep.
And therefore it means when I sit there and try and do work, I'm constantly having to push myself to focus.
Yep.
Whereas I don't struggle with that at work.
Yeah, interesting. Let's talk about your dog, Ollie.
Sure.
How do you train your dog so well?
Consistency.
Yeah. What's that look like? And how'd you learn how to do that too, actually? Because a lot of people struggle to train a dog. They love the idea of a dog, but forget that you still need to train them.
So have you ever heard the idea that if you're people describe this better than I'm about to, but have you ever heard the idea that if your parents are like really obsessed with something, really bad at something, then often you'll counteract that by trying to be really good at something?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So I love my parents' dogs to bits, but they are
Rabid.
they are not they're not the best trained dogs you'll ever meet.
Yep.
And I know from speaking to people and doing the usual YouTube and all of that to look at training dogs, at the end of the day, it's less about the specific way, whether you use treats or toys or praise or discipline or that side of things. Consistency is what teaches dogs.
Yep.
And it's the same thing as teaching people, but
Humans.
with dogs, it's more straightforward. And so for
Black and white necessarily sometimes.
a little bit, yeah. And so at the end of the day, for me teaching, only being a relatively structured person, I was lucky enough. I'm like, cool, set the structure and just keep doing it.
Yep.
And even though you get stuck, just keep doing it, and eventually it will pay off. And although it sucks, and you get 3 nights in, and you're sitting there crying, holding this puppy that's trying to tear you to shreds, you just have to trust the process.
You take Ollie into work most days?
I take him in once a week.
Once a week. Dog day?
We pretty much every day is dog day at Illuminate, but one day is Ollie day.
Ollie day. What day's Ollie day?
Typically Tuesdays or Thursdays at the moment.
Yeah.
He didn't come in today because Pip was in.
Fuck.
But maybe Thursday, maybe next week.
Who's the Illuminate favourite dog?
Clearly Ollie.
Clearly.
No. Unfortunately, look, historically we would say, but there's been a recent contender being Rob Dog. And Rob Dog is a very energetic GSP, and he's just an all-round enthusiastic doggo.
Yeah, gets you up, hey.
Yeah, he does. He'll also bowl you over if you're not careful.
Yeah, I can relate to that on another level, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What's a day off look like for Shane? What do you like to do? Let's
What's
just
a day-
diverge a little bit here.
A day
Just
off
give
for
your brain a rest, you know?
a day off for me is, in the very boring sense, a very slow day.
Yeah.
I
I love that.
Get up, take the doggo for a walk down to the local coffee shop, sit there, and typically sip on some cold brew for about an hour.
Which local?
Harlem in Somerville.
Oh, good coffee. Yeah, I've
Good
been there a few
coffee.
times. I house sitted just around the corner from that, actually.
Yeah, and they're really good, and so we've got some owners, and they're lovely. And it depends, like if Soap's around, like we'll hang out, but if not, I'll walk Ollie down there, I'll sit there on my laptop, and I'll find something that I'm like, oh, let's try this dumb thing, and I'll try and connect this thing to this thing, and then realize that there's a reason people don't do it because it's too hard. Or realize
Sounds like Excel.
No, it's typically pretending I'm a coder and then realizing that I don't do it for a living, so I should stick to the simple stuff. Doing that kind of thing, and then cruising home, cooking up some food, and then I've actually just genuinely enjoyed, since buying a house, is actually just getting out in the garden and doing stuff
You're
like
getting
that.
old, boy. You're getting old.
I would be lying if I said I haven't been made fun of a lot by Soph. For making comments about, oh, it'd be nice if I could get those weeds out and all that kind of stuff. So it's bad. I act like a 39-year-old at 29. So
I mean, I'm not that far behind you, so I feel you. How did you and Soph meet, actually? How long have you been together now?
Soph and I have been together.
Well, putting you on the spot here.
It'll be 8 years in August. So we met at the at Somerville YMCA. I was a member there at the time, and I've been training with some mates there for a while.
Yeah.
And Soph was the receptionist.
There you go.
So chatted up the receptionist. Actually, it was
You beat me to it.
I think Soph actually chatted me up. So I'm not sure how that feels about. I know Vertus got very strict rules on dating members.
I have very strict rules on that, but let's not get into that.
But no, so Soph and I got to know each other from that, and I think at the time, it was just at the end of the day, we just enjoyed each other's company. We got along. We were joking around. It's sort of a very common, very common values.
Yeah.
To be honest, and
What are they?
I
I know she's going to listen to this too, so.
I know she'll probably listen to this. I think in general, it doesn't, a big one for me is it doesn't matter what you believe in, just be a kind person.
Yep.
For me, being humble is above pretty much all things. At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with being confident in yourself and being proud of what you do, but doing it in a way where, one, you're aware that everyone else is amazing in their own way, but two, you're not pushing others down.
Yep.
Being aware of that. I think those are sort of one of the two big things that I sort of always think about when I'm interacting with people. At the end of the day, I never want to be that sort of chauvinistic person. At the end of the day, I just want to be that kind of person where I'll enjoy other people's company, but I'm never going to be that person that's look at me. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons that instead of having a party for my 30th, I'm going to nick off to Tassie.
You couldn't pick anywhere more perfect either.
Correct.
Middle of nowhere in the mountains.
Yep.
I wanted to talk about travel. What have you travelled? Have you done a bit of travel?
I have done a bit of travel. Been lucky enough to do a few things. Back in the day, I went to Bali and went to Australia's holiday house. And I don't really remember much of that trip. It was a bit of fun at the time.
You want to talk about that? Or
not really, no. I did actually get scammed at the airport, which was a good learning experience for me.
Go on then, tell us.
In short, I got off the plane, and I'm not sure if it's still a thing in Bali, but there's a bunch of people that sort of addressed as people that suggest they're security or suggest they're police.
Yeah.
They're not security. They're not police.
Never
but
been to
they
Bali.
will they will very assertively grab your bags and start dragging them towards the exit. And this is something that I think the security there or the police there just let happen.
Yeah.
And they'll walk you all the way through the exit and then won't give you your bags back unless you pay them.
Yeah.
So anyway, I learned that at a young age, and look, I'm better for it now.
Yeah.
But so that was a thing. But for that, in more recent years, Soph and I did Vietnam.
Yeah, that's right.
Probably 2018, 2016.
Yeah.
That was wicked. Absolutely love Vietnam. We'll go back there the second I can.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
lovely
it's
people.
on my list, I think. Well, I know it's on my list. It's just getting there.
Yeah, get there.
Yeah.
It's just lovely people, especially if you love the food. Just going around and walking around and experiencing it. And everyone's just lovely as well. Like, I don't think there's you can't go everywhere in the world where everyone's just like really like excited to meet sort of foreigners in a way. And so I think whenever we went places, particularly in Vietnam, like you'd meet people and they're just like, oh, Aussies, and they'd be sort of super excited. And as long as you were sort of like excited and intrigued to learn their culture, they'd be absolutely happy to have you.
Yep.
So we did that. We did Japan a couple of years later, and then we did Thailand a couple of years later after that. And loved all of those places, and I just love Southeast Asia.
Yep.
I think in some places you've got the idea of the simpler life, and in some places less so.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy that sort of slower pace, but also that more get out, explore, buy some dodgy food off the side of the road, try it, hope you don't get sick.
I hope you survive.
Look, I'm 3 for 3 on trips at the moment. I'm okay.
Oh, now you've said it.
So
Now you've said it.
it's going to happen to me next time. But look, I've had some fantastic curries for about 25 cents, and I'm going to keep trying them.
Yeah, I love that. You spoke of next time. What's next time? Where would you like to go that you haven't?
That's a good question. I think next, Soph and I have discussed this, next is going to be Kiwiland, aka New Zealand.
Yep.
I
I love New Zealand. It's
I
one of my
haven't been.
favourites. Oh, it's so beautiful. I love it.
I'm
I've been 3 times now, but with work.
Mhm.
So I'm keen to go, not by myself, but on a fun holiday.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So I'm excited for that. I'm not sure when that will be yet, but maybe a next year thing, maybe the year after that.
Yep.
But I think just my goal is always to go to places where you can sort of get out, experience. I don't want to be like experience nature and that kind of person. 'Cause I'm not.
I know what you mean.
I'm definitely not that far down the down that rabbit hole, but like I just enjoy exploring like a lot of people. And
Yeah.
for me, I'm not, while I do enjoy exploring a city, for me it's more about trying to explore as much countryside and sort of forests and all that kind of as possible. Because again, it comes down to that balance side of things for me. I think doing that stuff sort of recharges me and makes me more energized for the
It's
stuff that I do for work and the
out
stuff
the
that I
elements.
enjoy.
Out the
Yeah.
elements, out of the office.
Yeah.
You have to talk to Kat and Reg. I think they're back. Not that this is going to matter. It's going to come out in a month, but they're back tomorrow. So you'll have to get some
Damn.
tips from them, and they'll tell you how to not hike in Berks. Put it that way. That's a story for next time.
I've hiked in thongs before and I don't recommend it.
Oh, I'm not a thong guy. I can't do it.
It's not a bad thing.
I just can't do it. I'm a closed shoe guy.
That's fine.
Probably too much so, but that's...
It's not great if you're in Queensland and you're going snorkeling. I'd love to see that, but
Yeah, can't say imagine that that's a very good thing, but you want to talk work? After you've saved yourself. Let's talk work.
have to reach all that way to mute myself.
It's very respectful. A lot of people just turn away and muffle in the microphone.
It doesn't work that way. We
It
don't have
doesn't.
mute switches either, do we?
No, we don't. No, there's no foot pedals or anything here.
Go on, Wallace.
Sort it out. We're getting a new camera, actually.
Damn,
Yeah, apparently.
that's exciting.
Less iPhone filming. Great for
Yeah.
my phone storage.
Great for your phone storage and the battery.
And my battery, yeah. I had to charge it before I came prepared.
Good.
Made that mistake last time. What's a normal work week look like, Shane?
Oof, great question.
I say normal in quotation marks, in marks, because not every week is normal.
So,
What is your role for starters? What do you actually do at Illuminate? So you're an accountant, but what's that look like?
great question. So, my title at Illuminate is a tricky one.
All titles made up. What is it?
So my current title is head of tech and administration.
Yeah.
And that is the exact hodgepodge of a role as it sounds. But basically what that means is that right now I look after sort of Illuminate's technology. So think, or everything from like someone's computer, but all the way up to the software you use. We use how we use it, how it connects to other things. And then I also look after our administration team.
Yep.
On the side, I do a bunch of sort of client support. So this is a lot of just like, how do I do this in this accounting software? How do I get my payroll software to talk to this? I've got this point of sale that's spewing information here. How do I fix that?
Yeah.
Do a lot of that kind of work. And then just a bunch of general helping to run Illuminate, which is, as for a business of now 20 people, maybe 21. Is
that many? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a job.
That's a job.
And we share it amongst the team, and I'm really grateful for everything I get to learn from both the rest of the leadership team there, but also everyone else I work with. But it's one of those things that's kept me on my toes, and not something that I've been as fast as a learn. I'm typically a pretty fast learner, but this has been one of those things you just have to sort of churn it out and learn from experience, whereas you can't sort of like dive into documentation and read it flat out for a day, which I definitely do on other things.
Yeah. Well, how has your role grown or developed since you started? What did you start in to end up what you're in now?
So I was hired at Illuminate as an accountant. I was hired on the proviso that I would sort of help with our clients with like software and that kind of thing. So that was back in 2016, I think.
Is this flat out like cold apply for, or
so
coldly apply for the job, or?
So the job wasn't advertised. I just reached out to Andrew and I said, "Hey, I want a job," and he was silly enough to entertain that.
I don't think he's regretted it so far.
I don't. He's definitely regretted it at times, but I think overall, I'd hope that he thinks it was a good thing. But I would have to ask him.
We'll ask him.
But
has he been on the podcast? I think he might have way back in the day, but it might be time for a refresh. I think lots have changed in Andrew's world.
Potentially. Love the guy. He loves to talk, so I doubt you'll have an issue getting him on.
That I know.
But yeah, so I started as a sort of an accountant, and I was very green at the time. I was only about 2 years into the industry, and Illuminate taught me pretty much everything I know about what I do today. And so that's a lot of like bog standard how to do tax returns, but also went through and finished my CA, just being an accounting certification.
Yep.
Did that at the time and worked through that over sort of the last, I think for like the first 2 or 3 years. And so that means that, I went through and I learned how to work with, tax returns and activity statements, those sides of things. And so slowly worked my way up to picking up more complex things, picking up more client relationships, picking up advisory and tax planning and all of these other things that go into being an accountant at Illuminate, and sort of at sort of no point being super deliberate, but sort of just like saying like, oh, this needs to be done, I'll do it, I'll figure it out.
Yep.
And so a lot of opportunity that was just thrown my way, which is sort of like blind confidence.
I feel you. I can relate to that
not necessarily confidence in myself, but I say blind confidence from the rest of the crew, just like, oh, Shane
will work it out.
Yeah, he'll work it out.
He'll work it out. He'll fix it.
And that's very much to my detriment at times, but it means that from where I started to where I am today, like I often just end up fixing things.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly broad, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah. But because I've been at Illuminate for a long time now, I know how pretty much a lot of things work. I definitely don't know everything. Like it's impossible to know everything. But if something is not quite right or something's happened, 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, okay, it's probably because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that brings a lot of value to what I do at Illuminate. Yep. And ideally, I should do as little as that as possible because things work smoothly. But that's never the case in a small business.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why, you, myself, Tommy, we all do the same thing at different businesses working for the same people.
Yeah, I think it's a role that I think we've been lucky enough to sort of run into each other in different businesses, but obviously in close vicinity.
Yeah.
And you sort of realise that small businesses in different industries, but
same
at the end
shit,
of the day,
different world.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same shit everywhere you go, and like own twists in every different business. But I think especially from the privileged position I am in and getting to speak to a lot of business owners, you just sort of realize that we all go through the same problems and then think that it's special to us
Yeah.
and think that we've got to reinvent the wheel. But whereas 9 times out of 10, someone gone through this, and even though it may not be the exact same, it's close enough.
Yep.
And you can just take their solution, tweak it a little bit, and roll with it. And it may not be perfect, but it'll be good enough. And good enough is what makes profitable businesses.
Is that well, my question was going to be, what's something you think or you hope business owners learn from, or no, full stop? Is that something that kind of relates back to that?
Yeah. So the big thing that I feel that most business owners, I wish most businesses owners knew, but don't necessarily get to know, is that it's effectively like, what's in your bank account today is not necessarily what's yours.
Yeah.
I think that's a very basic way of saying that, like, in your personal life, 9 times out of 10, you got money in your bank account, it's up to you to spend it.
Yep.
But in the business world, you end up effectively looking after other people's money for long periods of time. And that may be the ATO and you're looking after your GST or the amounts withheld from employees' pay. Could be superannuation. It could be amounts people have paid you as a deposit. All these kinds of things which give you the impression that you've had made more money than you actually have.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
And then you have to be really wary about saying, cool, I've got this money and it's in my bank account, but it's not mine.
Yeah.
And so therefore, even though it may look like I've made $10,000 last month, I actually made $1,000 because I've got to give all this money to someone else.
Yeah.
And so it's been really wary about the idea of saying, look, just because you receive money doesn't mean it's yours.
Yeah.
And setting up systems to say, how much money have I actually made? Because if you don't know that figure, then ultimately you don't know if your business is viable and if you should just go get a job.
Yeah. What challenges does that present for business owners? What's the block that they can't see that then creates the challenge or the barrier?
The block is that they're not accountants.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
Accountants, we're a special breed in the respect that we're sort of like, we're trained and we're built to do this. But at the end of the day, if we're all accountants, then no one would get anything done.
Yeah.
I think there's a bucket load of value in what we do, and I try and communicate that to anyone I can.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, though, like, if everyone thought like an accountant, we wouldn't have creatives. And that's not saying accountants can't be creative, because that's definitely not the case. But and I don't mean that in the creative accounting sense, but I'm going to regret those words.
See, that partly went over my head, but I know someone's going to bring that up to you.
Someone will know someone will have a chuckle at that. But I think at the end of the day, like, what working with small business owners, and the great thing about doing that is that at the end of the day, everyone will love something in particular and they'll really own what they do. And at the end of the day, they should spend as much time and energy knowing that in and out as much as they can. And just like by taking that and sort of knowing it so well, that's what's going to generate value. That's what's going to generate profit.
Yeah.
And all this accounting knowledge, you need to know some of it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
You're
it's
there
not.
for a reason.
You're there for a reason. So
Yeah.
do your day-to-day thing.
Yeah.
And so it's about sort of creating balance in people's lives, where especially as a small business owner, you need to know this stuff because you can't yet pay someone to do it for you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, being aware that you need to create value by knowing the core of what you do and learning just enough accounting to get you by until hopefully you get to the point where you can pay someone to do that and you can focus purely on what you're good at.
Yeah, and I think, and Lockie will like me saying this, that was definitely one of his blocks starting. And being here moderately close to the start, that was always his challenge. He's not a numbers guy. He doesn't enjoy numbers. He hates the accounting side of things. But now, obviously, we have an accountant that looks after all that stuff. And I think that's very similar to what you were saying, is lots of people don't get into business to run the numbers. They get into the business because they're good at the day-to-day, or they really enjoy it, they really value the day-to-day things. And for us, that's helping people make better decisions with their health and fitness, or creating better humans. For you guys, it's helping businesses make better decisions around their money so they can be viable, profitable, and then do exactly what we're doing, which is help other people.
100%. And I think that's one of the reasons, like, I enjoy coming here and, frankly, like paying my hard-earned dollars to be here. Because at the end of the day, while I appreciate that I'm in a lucky position where I know a relatively good amount about training, and I'm aware of a bunch of training techniques, like the old, sort of like 5x5 and like, there's all kinds of ones like the Ensuns method off Reddit,
Yeah.
which was like massive for ages. Like, I know those things, but at the end of the day, it's not the core of what I do. I'm never going to understand as much of that as you and the rest of the team here do. And so at the end of the day, it's, if I can afford it, it's in my best interest to say, you know what? You know this better than me. I don't even need you to explain it to me. Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it.
And I know you like that. You
I
don't care what I
appreciate-
give it. You don't care what I give to you.
No.
As much as you might hate some of it when you're doing it, you come here because it's the space where, one, you don't have to think about it. You just get told, hey, Shane, go do 5 muscle ups and then do 5 power snatches.
Yeah.
It's a space where you get to progress and add value to your own life and leave the other stuff at the door, which is, I guess, I would presume a lot of the reason why lots of people come here is I reckon a lot of our clients could go train themselves by their and be competent at doing that because one, they've been either around enough or have self-developed enough to learn the skills that allows them to be able to train themselves, but also this gives them a space to not have to do that as well.
Yeah, and to learn from others, right? Like if we were all just sort of standing around, and no shade on Anytime Fitness, but just a random gym that I was thinking of, like if we're all just standing around Anytime Fitness and telling each other what works for us, that's great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're not, like, I'm not trained in that. They're probably not trained in that. They haven't gone through 3 to 5 years in university to know that. And we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And so while I try my best personally to fully appreciate that while I'm lucky enough to know what I do about training, and particularly around my own body, what works for me and what doesn't, and maybe one day I'll be able to do an ass grass squat, but probably never.
Hey, we're pretty close.
At the end of the day, hello Banksy.
Hello Banksy, I was waiting for your visit.
Hey,
welcome Banksy to the podcast.
At the end of the day, like I just don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly comfortable with embracing that and saying at the end of the day, like you and the team here do know far more, and like you won't know stuff, and that's fine. But I'm betting on the fact that you know more than me.
Yeah.
And for a bunch of other reasons, that's a huge amount of value to me.
Yeah. I also don't think you're going to give yourself 6 sets of sled drags and
Correct.
10 sets of 10 bench and whatever other shit I throw at you on a day.
I'm never going to do that.
How does it feel to be the guinea pig of Virtus, Shane?
Some days great, some days not so much.
And before we transition into our little topic here, what's like a day-to-day look like for you, work-wise? Just like from an insider's point of view, like what do you actually spend your day doing? And I know you're going to say no idea. I can see the look in your face going to that path, but...
Look, usually I struggle to remember what I did yesterday, and that's by no shade on what I do day to day. It means that often what I do day to day, I don't, like for example, quite often I would leave on a Friday, and then on a Monday, what I thought I was going to do that day has been thrown out the window.
Because you got 60 emails to reply.
Because there's like a bunch of emails that's come in, there'll be a bunch of messages been flown around internally saying, hey, this has come up, we need to deal with this now, let's get it done.
Yeah.
But typically a day-to-day for me would be just like reply to a bunch of emails, go through, jump into a couple of clients' accounts and say, hey, they've had this issue, here's how you fix it, record a Loom video.
You and Loom, you love your Loom. You have a love-hate relationship with Loom.
I have a good relationship with Loom. I have to dig up the stats and send it through after this, but my stats at Illuminate are like they're huge. I've recorded more than 1,000 Loom videos.
I remember you telling me this during COVID, or maybe just coming back out of COVID, of what you spent your day doing during COVID. And I thought I could not do that.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of experience talking to camera. In particular, while sort of like clicking around on a screen, and there are some hilarious Loom videos of me from COVID where I'll be showing someone something, and then I would see Ollie, who was a puppy at the time, like digging outside, and I'd be like, "You little shit," and run outside.
I reckon you've shown me one of these, and I can confirm they are proper funny.
Yeah, and the professional, sort of like the more suited up accountant would have re-recorded that. But I figured that was just funny for the person I was sending it to, and I sent it through, and they agreed. But so for me, that ends up like recording a couple of tutorials, doing a daily stand-up meeting with a team to circulate what we're doing that day, and then typically between sort of like tech support, showing the team how to do certain things, and delegating a bunch of tasks, and then leaves a bunch of time to do a little bit of support in the team around accounting. So like if a client's got a new inventory system and it's not working right, they don't know how this works, I'll go ahead and jump into some docs and work that out.
Yeah.
As of late though, I've just been doing a lot of team management.
Yeah.
And so that means just working with the team to say, look, we need to get these things done, we need these things documented, writing a bunch of processes and that side of things.
Yeah.
So actually very little accounting.
Yeah. Do you like that?
I definitely enjoy doing that work, but I think one of my struggles is that I'm a person that could wear many hats.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the fact that I can wear many hats, but it does limit my productivity.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question. What's a challenge you face?
Challenge
If that is one, what's another one you face? What's a barrier or a block? Or if I was to go to any of your staff, what would they say Shane's block is or Shane's challenge is?
They would say two things. They would say two things. They would say one, Shane does a little bit of, he's a jack of all trades, master of none.
Mm-hmm.
Master of a couple of things, but for the most part, master of none.
Yeah.
They would say that's block number one. And then two, I am a pathological saying yes to helping people kind of person.
Yeah.
Especially at work. So that means that if someone's like, oh, this is broken, how do I work this out? 9 times out of 10, I'll drop whatever I'm doing to help them. And while I'm getting better at sort of parking that and coming back to it later, 9 times out of 10, if someone asks me for help, even though I should be doing something else, I'll still help them.
Yep.
To give myself a little bit of credit, I am getting better at that, but for my history, that has definitely been a blocker for me doing my own work. And typically, while we quite often see this in the stats at work, that you'll see a lot of people will note me saying, oh, I've helped them that day, which is great. And I really appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that I still haven't achieved my own stats, and there needs to be a balance there.
Yeah. What do you see your role developing into?
It's a good question.
Versus what do you want it to be? What do you think you're going to have to do versus what do you want to do?
I was having this discussion literally an hour ago, and the
2 hours ago. We're going for an hour.
Okay. It wouldn't be much more. It would literally be an hour 20 ago then. It was that recent.
I saw you came in pretty stressed. So I'm interested about this part.
So right now, my sort of role at Illumate is one that we needed someone to look after a team, and I'm good at it. Like I'm okay at it. Like I'm a people person. I can work with them to show them how to do something and get certain outcomes. But by me doing that and the other stuff that I do, they get an okay manager, and the rest of the team gets an okay person that does this sort of tech support side of things in accounting.
Yeah.
So long term, we don't want to be doing that, and so it would mean that I'll step away. In a perfect world, I'll step away from the sort of like day-to-day people management stuff and help where it makes sense.
Yep.
And I sort of really lean into, hey, Shane knows how to work with these systems. Let's use him to set up a bunch of new processes. Let's use him to set up a bunch of these things that will make our team more efficient, more organised, and give better value, more value to our clients. And then once we're sort of comfortable that a lot of that stuff's been ticked off, then we'll start getting to do those same things for our clients and work with our clients to effectively say, hey, you've got X problem. How do we go about solving that?
Yep.
And obviously being quite linked to accounting, but being quite linked to accounting in the respect of saying that we ultimately know what sort of transactions and what kind of efficiencies are going to help with your profit.
Yep.
In the day, profit pays the bills. Mm-hmm. And so doing that in a way where we can help people not just, oh, this is how you do your books, but also here's how you implement this system which talks to your Shopify store and your Xero organization, so you can keep track of how much money you're making on this particular sale of this glass.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, a lot of people in small business actually don't know how much they're making on each unit, or how much it actually costs them to put this employee on for this shift.
Yep.
And helping people make those decisions is something that I'm keen to push into more.
Yep. What do you see as the most valuable thing that businesses, small or large, miss to start with, that you have to bring their attention to?
The most valuable thing?
Yeah, or something that you find quite valuable that a lot of people don't have to start with. That's your kind of, not necessarily your selling point, but how do you add value?
That's a tough one.
I'm not sure, but is there like a I don't know, a topic or an area or a system or a process that you see highly valuable that you present to businesses and they go, hey, this can change our world?
That's a good question.
I presume it's very different and adaptable based on the business too.
It is.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where I'm lucky that each of us at Illuminate are sort of in our own specializations.
Yeah.
And while I've got a bunch of stuff where I can jump in and help people fix issues, about having that sort of one piece of value that starts your business, that may not necessarily be my job.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly comfortable with that. But for me, at the end of the day, like, the one piece of knowledge that people running small businesses need to sort of understand is that at the end of the day, where you need to do that thing that makes you special. And just because you see people selling, like, you know, a coffee mug, you're like, oh, I'll sell coffee mugs. Well, at the end of the day, you're never going to make bucketloads of money out of that because that's already sort of like its own market.
Yep.
Whereas, using Versus as an example, like, there's a bunch of gyms out there, but doing it in the Virtus way is what makes Virtus special, and therefore can help Lockie, you know, look after his kids and, you know, pay for his house and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, it's always looking and saying, look, what about me makes me special, and therefore what can I do in the business world, and what can I sell that's different to anyone else?
Yeah. Interesting. Shane, we're going to transition to our topic of the day, which has been going for just under an hour. Is there anything else in Shane's world you'd like people to know about before we go to here, as an elusive character?
I'm not that elusive.
You are elusive. No one knows anything
in.
about you. The general consensus I got from talking to people for about a week about this was you are someone who keeps your cards relatively close to you, and that no one really knows anything about you. About Shane, not about Shane's world or accounting or throwing power cleans in the floor because you can't get under them.
Look, I'd like to think I'm a relatively friendly person, but at the end of the day, I'm definitely not the one to sort of typically initiate conversations with people I don't know.
Yep.
It's just something I'm just not particularly good at.
Yeah.
But as far as knowing stuff about me, like, I'm a relatively simple person, I'd like to think. Don't get me wrong, I know my shit about certain things.
Yeah.
And I will talk and talk and talk about those things.
Yeah.
But it also means outside of those areas, I'm useless. Don't get me wrong, I will happily watch a game of footy, but could I name a single player in the AFL right now? I potentially couldn't.
Hey, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
And so there's a lot of areas where I just have very little knowledge, and like when we've discussed random things at the gym about, you know, certain artists or certain music and stuff, like, unless it's sort of punk rock that was big between like 2005 and 2015.
Thanks to
like,
teen.
Yeah, you just can't. I just know nothing about it.
Yeah.
I think the thing that sort of makes one thing I think is special about me is that I can be very, very sort of focused and deep on knowledge in certain areas and be perfectly comfortable I know nothing about anything else.
Blissfully
So,
ignorant.
yeah, so in other words, if you ever go to a trivia night and I'm sitting on a table, sit on a different table.
You are in strife.
I'm outright
It's
awful.
not tech and punk rock. No good.
Pretty much, yeah.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Now, today's topic that I threw to you as you got here, which
I saw coming.
Yeah, I and lots of other people find value in the way that you are able to deal with these two things, which is creating discipline and creating routine, which you may or may not be self-aware of. I think you're pretty good at it, and knowing and talking to people that you worked with and spend time with, Sophie. Shout out, Sophie. What do the two words relate to you? So how do you create discipline, and what is a routine? So as when you hear those two words, what do they mean to you, and what are they?
Discipline to me means the ability to do something you don't actually want to do.
Sure.
In a way. I know that's probably not the correct definition, but
all words are made up. All definitions are made up.
That's true. But, you know, effectively, the ability to sort of like say, cool, even though, it's to be able to do a task with, I don't know, certainty and regularity. I actually wouldn't have a clue what the definition is, but at least to me, like, for most people,
I was just going to Google it. Mine's filming.
yours is, mine's over
Yours
there.
over there.
But yeah, to me, like, you know, it's like at the end of the day, you may not necessarily want to do what you're about to do or that kind of thing, but you do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I guess as far as like sort of rituals and habits or whatever we want to call it, you didn't say habits, did you? You said Anyway, so sure, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Welcome to podcasting. It's a general
Um,
consensus so far in season 4. Doesn't matter. Podcasting,
Doesn't
we
matter.
talk about whatever we want and go down whatever tangent we want.
Yeah, Chris, that's terrifying. But anyway,
It's so fun.
um, but like, I guess like habit formation to me, like it is, at the end of the day, that's what I feel like. Whenever you talk about like New Year's resolutions, like we're not just into the new year, we're nearly at the end of Jan. But anyway, like at the end of the day, setting goals is not what sort of gets you big strides in life. It's actually creating habits.
Yep.
Because doing
Yeah, I love that.
anything with repetition is how you make big change.
Yep.
Not by trying to do one big thing at once.
Yep.
Like like lots of people say that, you don't cram for an exam and then get great scores. Sometimes you can. And that definitely does happen. But you see people, they're like, the absolute smartest and brightest in every field. They're the ones that study an hour per night for like 30 days leading up to the exam.
Yep.
As opposed to that person that crams 30 hours just before the exam.
Is that something you've always had?
No, I'm a horrid procrastinator.
Yeah.
When I say I'm the person that crams for an exam, I am that person.
Me too. It's interesting because I kind of know that about you as it is, but it's an interesting dynamic to know that you are pretty disciplined and habitual about the things that you do, but also know that you can procrastinate and leave things. And how do you balance it too? Because lots of people's challenge is want and need to an extent, but it's the action that they struggle with. How do you kind of counteract the two of, I don't know, when you don't need to play an Xbox for 2.5 hours instead of doing XYZ? Just as a sporting team.
So for me, the reason that I'm quite disciplined about certain things is a direct result of me being a shocking procrastinator.
Yeah.
So, like I form those habits and I stick to them without fail because I know the alternative is if I start to break them and let any sort of doubt into my mind about them, I will fall back to just procrastinating the crap out of it.
Yeah.
And so the reason, because I'm aware I've got that side of my brain, the procrastination monkey. If you've ever seen that TED talk, if you haven't,
TED talk.
it's a great TED talk. I love it.
Yeah.
So I know that monkey's in my brain.
Yeah.
And it has control of pretty much everything.
I feel you.
But I'm aware of that, and so I know that for me personally, if I create certain habits and I work well within my limits to create those habits, then once the habit's created, it becomes easy.
Yeah.
And a dumb thing of recent history, I was Soph recently put me on to watching that Limitless series on Disney with Chris Hemsworth.
Yep.
And if you haven't watched it, I loved it. I thought it was great. It's basically about a bunch of ways that Chris in this case was trying to prolong his life, but also sort of pushing his body.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they're talking about, sort of habits and stuff you can do to sort of, prolong your life potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ones is the whole cold shower routine.
Yep.
And I'd never sort of put any serious thought into it. I'm like, do you know what? Let's see how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at least for me in my brain, I'm like, I'm not going to do this if I do a cold shower day one because that's going to suck.
Yeah.
So for the first week, I started with a slightly colder shower and a slightly colder shower and a slightly colder shower. And then I worked my way down to it. So it took me about like 8 days.
Yep.
But instead of me trying to throw myself in the deep end, I said, no, creating the habit is important first.
Yeah.
And I worked my way into it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, now that's a habit, I'll quite happily turn it cold for the last 20 seconds, 30 seconds of a shower. And while it sucks, it's actually not that much of a shock because I'm used to it.
Yeah. How do you work out the path to that? So taking cold showers is moderately straightforward in your plan of attack, I guess you could call it. I normally have a hot shower. I want to have a cold shower. I got to bridge the gap, so I need to get it colder before I get it cold.
Mm-hmm.
For things, I don't know, potentially around work or life or even taking Ollie for a walk, like what's the process you go about creating those habits?
So for me, it's all about identifying your capacity and then 2, starting small.
Yeah.
So, like...
Is there some other examples you can think of?
So a silly example is when I started here, I think I started maybe 2 days a week, 1 day a week.
Yep.
And then sort of worked I think it was 2.
I think it was 2, yeah.
I think it was 2, and I sort of worked my way up. But
Tuesday, Friday, from memory.
yeah, it sounds
Don't know
about
why I
right.
remember that, but
No, that's fair. But I think
habit of remembering shit that's not that important.
like we all do.
And forgetting the important things, but anyway.
Yep. So for me, like, it was purely around, like, I can't, even though I'd love to throw myself in the deep end, I definitely do on certain tasks. It's for something that I generally want to be able to, like, do a big task over time. It's more about, instead of, I just prioritize the habit. And so that means that if I want to start running every day, I'm not going to go out and run. I'm not even going to run 5K on the first day. I'm just going to run a K.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, the idea that I'm creating that habit is the thing that's going to be able to get me over the hump. And so I'm perfectly comfortable with the idea of starting as small as possible.
Yep.
And then once I've got that sort of repetition in my brain, I can then start to push. But because I've got the habit, I'm happy. I'm not just going to immediately drop it.
Yeah, with you. And I like that example because you see a lot of people coming here for the first, their onboarding sessions or something similar of that kind of nature. I want to train every day. Okay, great, sure. Great outcome. But how do we get there first? And, people, we have, ebbs and flows of, they train every day for a week, then they don't see them for 2 weeks. And it's one of those things that, from a health and fitness point of view, it's something that I think we see a little bit more of. Is there anything in your world that you kind of see on a similar trait or a similar vein?
We definitely see it with business owners where you will absolutely charge into starting their business and like getting their book set up as an example, and getting all the habits set up. But more often than not, a lot of people will be excited about starting their business and they'll do it right at the start. The issue with doing it right at the start is there's a whole bunch of information you need to learn from the day-to-day running of the business, and until you've seen that information and create the habit, all of this information you learn is more or less useless.
Yeah.
So I think often what I see people is like, oh yeah, I'll do all this stuff and then it'll be done. It's like, no. I don't want you to do it all at once. I want you to do this once a week, and then just don't touch it until the next Friday, and do it the next Friday after that, and the next Friday after that. But more often than not, what happens is that people will charge into it. They'll knock out a bunch at once. They'll forget about it for 2 months, and they'll be like, crap, I need to do a BAS. And then they'll pick it up again.
Oh, you mentioned the word.
And then they'll pick it up again.
Currently shivering in his headphones going, BAS. Every, quarter? BAS quarter?
Depending on the side of the business.
Yeah, I reckon I walk in here once a quarter and fucking BAS this, BAS that. You mentioned the word.
Yeah. So I mentioned the word. It's not a bad word. You just need to be prepared for it. But I think it doesn't matter. I feel like it's probably not all that different in many industries, and this is the same thing. It doesn't matter what industry in, same problems, just different tweaks on it, effectively.
Yeah.
But we see a lot of business owners that do that, and that's okay. It's a perfectly natural part of starting a business, and when those people are sort of happy to engage with us again, and we'll then help them start the habit. But it is ultimately, it's from our side of things, it's habits that create great businesses. It's not this like, brilliant idea and you just embrace it and you make millions of dollars. It's that person that rocks up every single day and they do their job without fail, and that consistency and that sort of ability to be relied upon is what creates the confidence and then ultimately the ability to make money. When do you struggle with habits? Or how do you struggle with habits? Banksy, you're underage, you can't have that. That's good. I actually do struggle with a bunch of habits at work. Yeah. So what's that look like? Just out of curiosity. So more often than not, like I'll rock up to work and I will, I'll open up Slack and I'll open up my emails and I'll start sort of ticking stuff off. Yeah. It comes from there, but ideally, I've always structured my day where I would go into Slack, I'd find everything I need to do in there, I'd move that into a task management system. Yeah. And then same for my emails, I'd take all of that, move it into a task management system, and then just start ticking stuff off from there. The practicality is I make it one message into Slack, get completely distracted, and then end up dealing with that thing on the spot. And then I'll then check my emails, find something more urgent, then deal with that, instead of actually doing that prioritization step first, which I know I need to do. Yeah. But because of sort of like the mode I'm in at work, I really struggle to create that habit. Yeah. Is that because you're a doer? I think that's just because of the pathological sort of trying to help people side of things, Yeah, I think I can relate to that a bit too.
similar, getting back to Slack or emails or anything, and then someone asks me a question about their program, or hey, can you change this, or hey, I'm going to go for a run. It's like, oh yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, correct.
45 minutes goes by, I'm like, shit, I haven't done any of my work.
Yeah, correct. And so that's definitely one area where I do have certain habits which work really well, but there's certain habits, particularly around my own workflow, where I have tried to start them and I've stuck to them for short periods of time. But there's always been something that's interrupted it, which has meant that I've struggled to keep it going.
Do you have tools that you implement to help not let that happen?
In a work context, yes.
Yeah.
Like I have a bunch of stuff which reminds me about things, because one thing I'm really aware of is my brain it just doesn't retain things to happen on a certain date. I won't sort of look at the 21st and think, oh, this is like so-and-so's birthday.
Yeah.
Like, with the exception, I hate admitting this, but like I genuinely struggle to remember my parents' birthdays.
Yeah, I shitty with days too. I feel
I love them both to bits, but like because as a result of that, I have both their birthdays in my calendar, and I have like 4 reminders leading up to their birthdays, because I know I won't remember it.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that, because that's just how...
It's your way of doing it.
It's my way of doing it. It's like, at the end of the day, I'm lucky enough to live in a world where I can set up those systems to compensate for that.
Yeah.
But there's no point kidding myself and thinking I'm going to remember it, because I'm not.
Yeah.
So I think for me, like I will always lean on the tools to remind me of that kind of stuff, because at the end of the day, one, I don't think our brains are actually... Most people's brains aren't built to remember that stuff well.
Yep.
But 2, for me in particular, it just doesn't work. I will think on the spot. I will stay calm and collected and work something out. But my ability to sort of pick something up on ritual every single time is not one of my strong suits.
Yeah. Is there areas that you still find blocks in that space from like creating discipline and habits that you either are overcoming currently or see other people making the same mistakes that you can go, hey, I think this is a good idea? Is there anything in that space, like currently, like as it stands, that you can think of?
In a work context or home context?
Either other. Yeah, either other.
So basically, some area that, at least for me personally or for others around me, that struggle to create the habit.
Yeah.
Because
I highly value your ability to create system processes around anything, whether that's work, life, or anything like that. And I think that's something that people can gain a lot of value from you on. And I think that is also why you're really good at what you do, is even though that you have or the want and need and desire to help and fix problems per se, like you have these back-end systems and processes that you are really competent at that make you really good at your job.
So I think for me, like at the end of the day, more often than not, everything we're trying to achieve is just a piece of information, and we're just looking for the right thing to stash it in.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter what that tool is, as long as we create the habits to consistently look at that tool and do that, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like for me, I do struggle with the idea that you will have certain things which fit certain tools really well, and which some things that don't. Like I think Notion's a fantastic example where a lot of people love Notion to bits.
Yep.
And a lot of people will try and shove everything into Notion because it can fit a lot of things.
What is Notion for people that maybe don't know what that is?
Notion is like it's sort of hard to explain, but it's effectively like you could think of it as like a personal wiki kind of thing, but it's effectively just this site that you can put it's a service.
Yeah.
But you can effectively create pages in it, and those pages can be full of information. But then those pages can also have it's technically a database, but effectively they can have a bunch of information, effectively tags on them.
Yeah. Okay.
Which you can then relate to each other.
Sure.
And so it's a really dumb way of saying that you can have like, a table of meals, and each of those meals will have all of the steps within it.
Sure. Yep.
But each of one of them might be required to have, okay, this is a meat meal, vegetarian meal,
Yep.
past all of that, and you can then create sort of relationships between those.
Sure. Yeah,
So your meal plan table could be linked to your meals.
Yeah,
and that
I'm
kind
with
of thing.
you. Yeah, I'm with you.
And so Notion's a really cool tool for that, because ultimately, like, information and ideas are all linked to each other, and allows you to do that.
Yep. Very rarely they're on their own.
Yeah, spot on.
It comes from something else.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Notion's not a task management tool, and so if you try and shove task management into it, you can do it.
Yeah.
But it's not great at
It's easy
it.
to get lost.
It's easy to get lost because there's lots of options, but it also doesn't have the abilities of like repetition and all of the flexibility there that something like ClickUp or Todoist or Asana has.
Yeah.
And so it's being aware that in a perfect world, we would take all of this information and shove it into the one tool, and we would have this single pane of glass.
Yep.
The practicality is in a small business, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And in our personal lives, we also can't do that because
Yeah.
you can't find that one spot. So you have to be comfortable with the compromise that this thing is important enough that it needs its own spot that's tailored to that.
Yep.
And then everything else is probably just going to get shoved in Apple Notes and deal with it.
Yeah, well, Apple Notes. Oh, I got a bad story of Apple Notes actually from the last week. Tried to sync my phone to my laptop, wasn't syncing. Got rid of every single note on my laptop. Nowhere to be seen again.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that hurt. It hurt. Just 5 years of notes down the track.
Should call tech support about that.
Thought about it.
Do
You know what I
anyone?
thought? You know what I thought? Mitch, you're an idiot. You deserve that. What about routine? You're pretty structured with your week, right?
Very structured.
Where I know that comes from a logical systems processes brain,
Mhm.
but what do you struggle with the routine?
I struggle with going home on time.
yeah, I knew that.
That's but for the most part, I don't super struggle with my day-to-day routine.
Yeah.
In the respect that like I always shove the important things in my day to the start of the day because I know I won't be impacted by whatever happens in my day.
Yep.
I think the big thing that I struggle with routine is not the routine and sticking to the routine. It's dealing with stuff outside of it.
Yeah,
So I actually go too far the other way.
yeah, I'm with you. Yep.
So, like for example, I'll have stuff that sits on like my to-do list for ages, not because I don't have the time to do it, but because the idea of sort of breaking the routine to do something
Yeah.
is not difficult, but like it sounds like a big effort.
Yeah, and the value of it is slightly different.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it'd be in the start of your day, right?
correct.
Yeah.
So I absolutely like will push everything there, and then like if something is after work, it's definitely valuable. But at the end of the day, if I need to know that it's going to happen throughout the day, I won't put it after work because at that point of the day, I'm tired. I potentially have got home somewhere between 5 and 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if I need it to happen, I'm not going to count on that Shane being able to do it.
Is creating a routine for you marking value on tasks to an extent?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you is value from a time point of view or from an outcome point of view? Meaning, does it
Outcome.
have urgency, or is it something that's quite important? You need to get it done, or is it a bit of both? Because to an extent, it could be both. But
So, yeah, that's a tough one, right? So,
Yeah.
for me, it's not about the time it takes; it's about the outcome, and that switches depending on the context.
Yep.
Like you can't say that something is worth what it is, like irrespective of the time that it takes to put in.
Yep.
But yeah, for the most part, like my sort of like using versus things like my health and fitness is important, and the habit of it is important, and that's why it's at the start of my day.
Yeah.
But I'd also say as well that the reason I put those stuff to the start of my day is also because it's difficult.
yeah, and it to an extent gives you a higher quality day. I would say, like, gives
Yeah.
you more energy and makes you look more alert. Like,
Yeah.
Have you ever trained in the afternoon?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, prior to Virtus.
Ah, yeah, prior to Virtus. Okay, that's a little different. Because I was actually thinking about this before, and when I knew that this was going to be the topic, I was thinking, I don't think Shane's actually ever trained in the afternoon.
I trained in the afternoon for my onboarding.
Yeah.
I've trained in the afternoon for barbells and beers.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And there's definitely one or two,
Yeah.
but that's about it.
People hearing that would be just like, how?
Because the training in the morning is the easy part.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even have enough time to think about not going to Virtus in the morning. As in I get up and I come here.
What makes you get out of bed knowing that? Because a lot of people, I'm sure as you're aware, have been lonely at 7 a.m. many a time here in winter.
Yep.
For you, what's the thing that gets you out of bed when it's 2 degrees and you know it's going to be cold in the gym, whereas you potentially think other people might stay in bed and go, do it after? Is it just knowing that it's adding value to your day?
The thing is
Or
that
is it just
I know.
like you don't really have to think about it, it's just something that's ingrained in you now?
Well, the reason I do it, it's ingrained at this
Yeah.
point. But the reason I do it at the start of the day is because I know it won't happen after work.
Yeah.
And so if I know it won't happen after work, the only option is to do it before work.
Yeah.
And coming back to the procrastination monkey, the only time that the procrastination monkey cares about something So it needs to happen now.
Yeah.
And so I think to bounce off that, I've more or less taught myself to say, well, it can't happen after work. I start work at 9 a.m, so it has to happen now.
Yeah, and I find that something that's I know lots of people struggle with that. One, especially when it's colder in here, but two, it's a thing that you, unlike most, will only ever train in the morning, but you'll always still get your 3 sessions in, which I think is something that can be admired for. One, from our aspect, is we know we're going to see you full stop. But two, from other clients seeing you in here every morning going, oh yeah, Shane's here. It's a normal Tuesday morning. Like, it's something that, and which is why I want to talk about this, is for your topic of creating a routine and discipline and habits and things around that, is people see that as value. And I wanted to tap into your brain around how does that work for you, which I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I think sort of like creating the false sense of urgency is a really dumb way, but at the end of the day, like, the reason I do it with regularity is not because I create that false sense of urgency, but also, like any part of your day, like, once I started small and I created those steps, I just stuck to it. And so I didn't try and start training at 6 a.m. because the practicalities, I knew I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And so I started training at 7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And then when the timetables changed a few years back, I shifted back to 7.
Yeah.
And that was just being very comfortable with the idea that I knew I wasn't going to do that. So I worked within what I knew I would do. And so it literally starting small, create the habit, and then push harder from there.
Yeah, but before we wrap it up, what are some recommendations you would have for people who are trying to create a habit or are trying to create routine around potentially their training or their work? Or what are some things you find highly valuable that helps you, one, to either start a new one or maintain a current one?
Train in the mornings is number one.
Yeah, I love my mornings. Amen.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, for me, it's always start small. Yep. Like, at the end of the day, you need to start with something that is super easy to accomplish.
Yep.
And then from there, creep it up. Because at the end of the day, it's not the value is not in seeing the goal and doing these big strides towards it at once. It's about creating the habit that'll stick with you for a year, for life, whatever it is.
Yep.
And so prioritize creating the habit above everything else, and then the results of that habit will come over time, and just being okay that that's not going to be immediate. It may not be 6 months, it may not be 12 months. It'll be years. And I think for me and my ability to like squat, it generally was years.
We got there. Getting there.
It's getting there. It's still not perfect, but
it's pretty good.
It's a lot better than it was. That's for sure. So that's my sort of like as simple as it comes. Like, you need to, like, it's habits meet goals, and therefore your New Year's resolution shouldn't be to create goals. It should be to create habits.
Yeah, and a lot of the value we add here is you want this, and I think I can bring this probably back to our goal setting. I onboarded our interns today. We're talking about our onboard process that we do with Virtus, which is goal setting and movement screen. It's the first session they do. The goal setting is what they want, or the tip of the pyramid. The movement screen is the bottom. It's what they need. Our job as coaches is to merge the two together. And I think when we're talking about creating habits and things around that, I think that's a highly, highly valuable skill of work out what you want, what do you actually need, and how you're going to work out the path from A to B, which I think is what you're talking about, of starting small and then building up to what you want or what you need.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, the nice thing about training here is that you've got your accountability buddy.
Yeah.
And I think wherever you can, you give people permission to hold you accountable to that.
Yeah.
That's not possible for everyone. I'm lucky I work a 9-to-5 job, and it's really easy for me to structure my weeks.
Yeah.
But if you can give, if you can give the people here, or you can give people in your personal life permission to hold you accountable to those things.
Yeah.
And react nicely when they do that. It makes the social expectation for you to do that appear. And like a lot of things, we find it a lot easier when someone's doing that for us.
Yeah. I can think of a practical example right now. We've definitely dragged Kat here a few times earlier than what she would have liked to come here, because she knows that we're waiting for her at 7.
Correct.
And Kat will like and hate us saying that.
She will, and she will forever rock up at 7:05.
Or 7:15.
Correct, and we will forever take bets on it.
But we, as accountability for her, understand that we're, to an extent, creating urgency around creating habits.
Yeah, correct. And creating urgency about doing the Monday session on a Monday.
Yeah. Start your week early. Don't get to Wednesday and think, I've done nothing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think like ultimately it just by sort of sticking, and like I hate to say sticking to because it's definitely not that simple, but
No.
I think by effectively saying like at the end of the day, this is starting and any new habit is difficult,
Yeah.
but by one just saying, cool, I'm going to make this super easy, and I think sort of like with Verse as an example, like having that movement screen session as a first session is great because all you have to do is rock up and you're going to do a bunch of uncomfortable movements,
Yeah.
but it's not that hard.
No.
And so having that as sort of like a first step is great because it's very low in confrontational, whatever.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then the next one is then a little bit of a step up, but not that much.
Yep.
And so it's sort of easing into these steps,
Yep, absolutely.
which by doing it just makes it, you can effectively trick your brain into saying that what's going to come is not that hard.
Yep.
And the reality is it isn't that hard, but we just make it out to be more than
Yeah,
it is.
barriers are barriers because we create them. A lot
Yeah.
of the time they exist because we create them, and there's always situations that that's not the case. But for the most part, the things that people struggle with, they struggle with it because they decide to create the barrier,
Yeah.
whether they're subconsciously or consciously. Either way, it's only there because they believe it to be there.
Yeah.
It's our mental fortitude or our willingness to be able to get over that barrier that helps create the things that we're good at for a long period of time, which then therefore creates habits and routine and discipline, and we get to where we want to be.
Yeah.
Easy as that.
Not that easy.
Yeah,
But
it sounds easy.
yeah.
On that note, I'm going to wrap it up, Shane.
Thanks, mate.
What you enjoy that you didn't think you enjoy about this?
The
Have you
beer
done a
with-
podcast before?
Sorry?
Have you done a podcast before?
Have I done a podcast before? Technically, kind of, maybe.
Kind of maybe. I'll take it kind of maybe.
Yeah. Done like a video thing for some accounting software provider.
Of course you have.
Yeah, it was incredibly nerdy. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah,
And
you thrive in that too.
I challenged the shit out of the people on that.
Love that shit.
And I was not invited back. But that's okay.
Hey, worth it.
But yeah, no, it's been good. I'm not one to talk about myself. I try and avoid it as much as possible.
Which is why I really wanted to get you on. Everyone's like, get Shane on. I thought, I don't think Shane's going to say yes.
I'll say yes to a surprising amount. At the end of the day, I do lots of dumb things. I never thought I'd skydive, and I did that just because someone asked me to do it. But I think one step for me, and like looking forward for the next 10 years, I think one thing I'd like to do is instead of being that person that's always open to saying yes, I want to try and be more of that person that is asking other people to say yes.
Yeah, yeah. What
Okay.
do you reckon that's going to look like? What do you want it to look like?
Today, yeah.
That's exciting. Well,
Yeah,
on that cliffhanger,
yeah.
guess what? We're out of here. Thanks for coming on, Shane.
Thanks, mate.
We're done.
Have a good day.